Hello and welcome to another episode of the Sorted Indie Retail Sessions podcast. My name's Pete Lydon, I'm a product marketing specialist here at Sorted, and I'm a previous owner of two e-commerce businesses in the homeware and menswear space. We're doing something different here today, and instead of having an entrepreneur with us on the podcast, we've got one of our in-house specialists here at Sorted, who is Vickey Eggleston, our carrier product manager. How are you doing, Vickey?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. Nice to join you today, Pete.
Perfect. And would you be able to start us off by just giving us a little insight into what you do here at Sorted?
So my current role is carrier product manager. I've been with Sorted for just over 6 years now. I previously managed our relationships with carrier partners, but now I am heavily involved with the development teams. And as such, over that time, I've overseen over 50 different carrier integrations that we've built domestically and internationally. And a lot of that work is done with our in-house developers and also offshore teams as well as the new integrations. We obviously have to maintain and enhance our existing integrations as well, but it's all things carrier.
Perfect. That sounds like never changing. Sorry, never staying the same or constant changing role.
Yeah, and prior to being here, I also did 3.5 years with another delivery management platform, and also 18 years within a carrier covering operational, technical, and commercial aspects.
Perfect. No, that's amazing. And what I'd like to do is to start today is look at a retailer that's already selling, already going, has their loyal customer base, but it's probably made ends meet so far and doesn't really know what they're doing in the shipping space and looking at it from there. So once a retailer's opened up an e-commerce business and an e-commerce site, what would you recommend for them in their carriers relationships and how they should manage that moving forward?
Yeah, so the first thing is to actually look at the product that you're actually going to be shipping out. So within the carrier space, a majority of carriers will take all sizes of products, but they do have key areas that they can focus on. So the first thing would be to look at your product sets and then overlay that with the carriers, look at any limitations they have within that, but also look at the doorstep experience. So that is key in how you want your brand to be reflected. So as an example, there's a number of carriers that are the fully branded experience, a uniform driver, branded van, branded communications, consumer apps available. And then we've also got some which actually have more of a lifestyle driver experience, where this would be a non-branded driver coming to the doorstep delivering the parcel. Both are equally as strong, but I think it's important in how you want to reflect your brand. In that, look at the experience that your consumers will have as your product is delivered.
And in your experience, does that branded aspect pay? Obviously it's usually a more expensive carrier that has the branded end-to-end experience. Do you feel that experience is worth paying for?
You can get good and bad experiences on both branded and unbranded. I think it does come down to your product. If you're at the higher end, then you may want that branded experience just to kind of reflect how your brand works as well. So I don't think there's any hard and fast rules, but it's also looking at that proposition. It's looking at, what you're going to offer in the checkout, looking at the customer service cycles, how problem parcels are recovered as well. So there's no hard and fast rules around it.
Perfect. And aside from the price and the reputation and the branded nature of it, what other elements of a delivery service should a retailer be looking at? In terms of insurance and other elements, where would you prioritize your thoughts?
So as you say, price is one, the product suitability to the carrier strengths and that doorstep experience. Insurance is an interesting one, again, based on the value of the product that you're sending out. What you may find is that a carrier will offer a lower rate for a non-insured parcel to go through the network. So it's then important to understand as well the value of the product, what the loss rate is or breakage rate is, because you may find that the administration that goes with processing claims through far outweighs that per parcel discount. Again, you have to look at the overall picture. How many parcels are you actually dispatching out, to whether a 5 pence, 10 pence reduction is going to be worth it in view of, say, 1 or 2 parcels going missing. So there's a lot of factors to to work out on that as to what is going to suit your business now. And of course, you can always renegotiate with your carriers as well if volumes are going up or there are problems. Key thing is to stay in contact with your carrier and then maintain that relationship.
So in short, what you're saying is, if you have a particular product that doesn't go missing or doesn't get broken very much, it can actually be more cost effective to not have insurance or have a lower level of insurance than be all bells and whistles, all insured up, but actually you're paying for something you probably don't need.
Absolutely.
No, definitely. And one thing I've found interesting when sending and receiving parcels is, post Brexit, the whole sort of signature experience around carriers has changed a bit. In regards to, it's not as prevalent now, and sometimes it can be an e-signature or it can be a picture and things like that. Have you got to be careful in what you're paying for there? Because sometimes you might be paying for something that you might not be receiving anymore.
Again, most carriers will offer signature and non-signature options. So the non-signature is obviously the cheaper option, but comes with risk around that, dependent on where the driver deems as a dry, secure location, which can be open to interpretation at time as to what constitutes that. But again, as you say, it comes down to your product and also the performance of that carrier. So as you're starting, working with them, you'll certainly get a feel for what that performance is, and how your consumers are receiving those parcels based on the number of queries coming into your customer service centre.
Perfect. And with the carrier itself, then, so you've decided on a carrier because you've done your research, and that's probably a question I should ask, actually. Where would you research the carriers themselves? Where would you look at the individual characteristics for them?
Yeah, so clearly the carriers' websites have a lot of information on about their proposition. You've also got quite strong sales teams in the majority of your carriers. So get your local representative to come in, engage with them, share what your product is, what you're looking for, what kind of experience that you're looking at purchasing from them. And the biggest way is to actually test the network yourself, get that experience that your consumer is going to have when your parcels are delivered. So, get some orders placed, know who the carriers are that are coming, and see, did the parcel arrive on time? What kind of communications did you get? Was it email? Was it SMS communications? Did you have to go to the app? But that is by far the best way to be able to test a particular network, is to experience it for yourself.
That sounds like a really good idea, because it's not a costly exercise. It's something that you can do quite affordably. It's something that doesn't have a lot of limit to entry on, does it? You don't need any special consultancy or anything to do that. So it sounds like a really good idea. And as you say, you want to be able to know what your customers will be experiencing by doing it yourself. And I hear a lot of entrepreneurs saying they do the customer service, or they do things fulfillment or what have you themselves, just to make sure that they know exactly what their staff are experiencing and what their customers are experiencing. So I think that's really, really good input, and I think that makes a lot of sense. When you start the relationship with the carrier, then what would be the key points in terms of I guess they're looking for certain things from you, and I guess being truthful at the start will probably give you a better relationship with them from the beginning.
Absolutely, it's about transparency. So again, over time, I've seen lots of experience where the retailer has got some great ideas and think that they will declare that they're going to be shipping more volume than they actually are, because obviously higher volume brings the rate down in the majority of cases. The problem you've got with that is that the carrier will be actually, monitoring those volumes. There's a profitability element for them, and therefore, if they've geared up to collect a certain amount of parcels each week with a particular vehicle type, and then the volume isn't actually there, they're incurring cost, and that's something that isn't sustainable for a carrier. So if you're in that position where you're not shipping the volume, then you could find yourself in a position where there's a hefty surcharge at the end of the month because you've not reached the quoted volumes. Or you could find that they do come back in and renegotiate your rate for an even higher rate, obviously to reflect the volume that's going through. So transparency is key. Being honest, everyone wants, the volumes to grow, but be realistic at the start on that. Get to know your local depot. They're the ones that will be servicing you, so it's important to develop that rapport with them, because invariably things can go wrong, and if you've got that strong relationship, then that will help. And the other thing is the traffic presentation. So again, it's about how your products are packaged to minimise any damage as it's going through the network. Make it easy for the driver when he's collecting those particular parcels. And of course, one of the most important things is make sure you're paying your bill. So the carriers, will be looking to collect that money. So you could incur stoppages on your traffic being shipped if you're in a debt situation with the carrier.
Definitely. So as with any relationship, good etiquette and doing things properly in a timely manner, paying properly, working with the carrier rather than against them, it's always going to give you a bit more slack, and you feel like, if there are any issues that you have in volume, whatever, you're more likely to get a bit more leeway if you behave properly, essentially.
Yeah, and as you scale, that'll give you some confidence. If you're doing things professionally, as your volume grows, then the carrier can grow with you. They can change them collection vehicles, look at, your account moving up within their business, but they are there to support smaller businesses, through that growth stage.
Perfect. And would you recommend at this smaller level of business, these independent businesses, to look into having multiple carriers initially, or would you build one and then when that's working potentially add another one, or how would you manage the sort of amount or quantity of carriers that you would be looking to be using?
Yeah, I mean, it is probably difficult when you've only got small volumes to go out to these carriers. And going back to our point on the volume, if you've only got a small volume, then it could only be a couple of parcels per carrier until you get up and running. But I firmly believe that multi-carrier is the way. As I said before, some carriers will have niche areas that they're stronger on performance, whether that be geographical, size of product, value of product as well. So it certainly pays to have more than one carrier, so that you've got that contingency element as well, just in case they're incurring high volumes, especially through the peak period. So I would definitely advocate multi-carrier as you're going on your journey.
And I suppose even though from a volume point of view that gives you less power or less less volume, it also gives you the power to be able to turn that carrier off if they're not performing as you'd like. So effectively you're less reliant on them, and effectively you're putting yourself in charge of the situation there. So from that side of it, you give yourself a little bit of momentum back as a smaller retailer that might not have the kudos of a bigger player.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a competitive market as well. So you will have them carriers, they will be perhaps aware that there is more than one carrier serving you. So you could find that they're coming in because they'll be wanting to, gain that extra volume. So what will they be doing to work hard to get that extra volume? But you certainly need more than one just to cover you.
Perfect. No, that sounds great. If it's okay with you, I'd like to touch a little bit on international shipping, especially given some of the challenges that small retailers have had, post Brexit and that side of things. First of all, I guess, can the carrier help and guide you in regards to your international shipping, and is that something that you can reach out to them for?
Yeah, and a lot of the carriers, especially through the Brexit and IOSS, were certainly recruiting and having their own in-house specialists. And there's a lot going on across all the different regions in the world, and there are different rules by different country. One of the things I did experience outside of the top three, such as FedEx, DHL, and UPS, where they do their own whole end-to-end clearance. For some of the other carriers, they will use different partners in different countries. So it always pays to check based on the terms that you want to ship, whether it be DDP or DAP, to check whether it is actually available within country. Because there can be a lot of variables, but the carriers, through that experience through Brexit, have become very knowledgeable. So, certainly ask them any questions about specific territories, because they have got the experts there to help you.
That's ideal, and that sounds fantastic, because I think in the early days it was a bit of a minefield, wasn't it? And they probably weren't fully prepared, but that's fantastic that they're getting there now. And you mentioned sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so I'm going to say the other thing that's become more popular is paperless trade as well. That's certainly seen a big surge in the last couple of years. So paperless is where that data is transferred through to the carrier electronically, normally through your manifest process, and they can then utilize that data to do faster clearance as well. And there's obviously a green element to that as well, because you don't have to be printing all these documents within the warehouse as well. So certainly look at those options, because some carriers will offer a reduction for a paperless service.
Oh, brilliant! So you can have a cost reduction, you can have less admin, you could have a greener service, and it could also be faster all through paperless.
Yeah,
that's really, yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, that's a win all round, isn't it? That's fantastic. And you mentioned before about the end-to-end services with the three big players and what have you. Have you seen more of a need for an end-to-end service post Brexit, or any feedback there?
Yeah, I think people have looked to that more, because there is a lack of knowledge and understanding. So, if a carrier is going to offer that whole end-to-end service of clearance, then, for some people that is a really good support solution. But for some others, that obviously comes at a cost. So it's worth just checking how much is being charged by the carrier for that clearance. But you will find different options available. But again, just check there's no hidden costs or something that you thought was contained within the cost that then you're liable for separate. So just make sure that you check everything through.
Perfect. And in regards to sort of surcharges and additional costs, I think one that's very current at the moment is fuel surcharges with the state of the world at the moment and how expensive fuel costs are. How would you go about just making sure that that base price isn't anywhere near what you're actually getting charged, and making sure that you're you're covered, in case your costs are going up, and to know to be as educated as possible into what you're actually being charged?
Yeah, it is very difficult, and it is so volatile at the moment within that. But the carriers will have a reference index that they normally use to, so it does go off the price of a barrel of oil as such. But you will find that they do have a reference table, so you can check yourself on that reference table. But I think it's very difficult. I think it is something that people just have to accept, that fuel surcharge is on there, and just continually checking, how are you incorporating that into your delivery charges that are being passed on to the consumer? How are you ensuring that you're covered, but without it feeling that that people are just automatically getting that on? It's quite a challenge, but it's about continually reviewing it. Most carriers will do that on a monthly basis. So it is that monthly charge, but I would expect that at the moment it's going up and down quite a little bit.
So just for clarity for people, just if I've understood this correct, effectively they can't just up your fuel surcharge however they want. It's completely linked to how much a barrel of oil is costing. So effectively they're only passing on a cost that they're incurring themselves.
Yes, and they use the reference tables. That's certainly my experience, that there's a reference table there of somewhere that you can go to that's independent on how they're calculating it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And so I guess you just need to build in a bit of fat at the moment then, don't you, in terms of just assume that whatever it's costing you, add in 5-10% and make sure that you're covered in case it does go up to that sort of level, just to be sure. And just be it's a bear market, isn't it? It's a market that you just need to be really careful and keep your costs under control as much as possible.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Definitely. And so one thing we speak about a lot is the customer service element of shipping and how cumbersome it can be to small businesses about how, when things go missing or when they're damaged, how much time it takes or to keep a customer happy because the tracking wasn't available. And I think, what I was going to ask is, how much value should the retailer put on that compared to the lowest price carrier, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's looking at what options the carrier has for the consumer to actually be able to track that parcel, because as we know, poor visibility will drive inbound calls to your customer service, and that could be anywhere between £6 and £10 for a customer service representative to handle that call. So that's when we talk about hidden costs and looking at the performance of a carrier, those are the things you have to be thinking about. How much activity is going to be driven into my business. So look at each of the carriers. What are their customer service processes that they've got? Who should the consumer be contacting? Is there a channel for them to go to the carrier? And it's always a bit of a grey area, that one. Should the consumer contact the carrier? Should they contact the retailer? And there's a lot of variance there as to who it is. But ultimately, if you look at it, that if a parcel is confirmed as lost, the carrier will not be able to reorder that for you. So for me personally, it's about going through the actual retailer if you've got a problem. But how can you make it easy? How can you send communications out to actually tell them and update them where the parcel is, as opposed to them there being a radio silence and then ringing you to say, where is my parcel? On that. So look at the customer service processes that are there, but also look at how you're describing it within your checkout. Are you giving information there about what to do, who to contact, what the service proposition is? Are you going to dispatch it next day? Is it a 5-day service? And also don't forget about deliveries to them outbound areas. So where it's going to take a little bit longer than, say, a 24-hour service, make sure that is reflected. So those people that live in the far flung areas, are expecting it to take longer for that parcel to come. But it's all about communication and visibility that you can do. Unfortunately, some parcels do get lost, so it's about how you deal with that as well, whether it's replacement parcel, whether it's refunds, so on and so forth.
Perfect. And I guess push to have your own customer relationship manager where possible. If you have the volume, with the carrier, make sure that you've got an escalation route if things aren't working as you hope in that environment, I presume.
Yeah, and most carriers, even for smaller volume clients, they've got those more regionalised managers there. So you should always have an account manager aligned to you. And as you say, use them for understanding what their escalation processes are, should you need to use them.
And once you have got going, and once you are of a good size, and potentially have that gravitas to ask for things off your carrier, will they be able to listen to you in regards to potentially collecting later so that you can get more orders on that day, or any of the elements that can they provide potentially packaging and those sort of elements to make sure that the experience is easier for you and a bit slicker as well?
Yeah, so one of the key ones is the later cut-off time, because of course that allows you to continue taking orders for longer on the website. So that is one of the key things. A lot of that can come down to, you know, where you're located compared to the hub, and what kind of run time that will be into it. So I would say yes, that's definitely one area that most people would look to focus on. Rate again would be, if your volumes are going up, then, you know, can you negotiate for the rate to be coming down on that? And then packaging. I don't know about packaging these days, because a lot of the retailers have their own branded packaging. I'm aware that some carriers will supply the labels, so the 654 labels that are normally on there. Some carriers may supply those to you. But there's definitely worth having a chat with your account manager to see, you know, what else can be achieved. If you're growing, they will be looking to keep your volume.
Amazing. Well, I think that's a great way to finish there, and a perfect position. I've learned so much from that. So thank you so much, Vicky. And it's been a pleasure, and thanks for your time. Thanks for all the listeners. And if you could give us a rate and subscribe on all the usual places, it'd be really, really appreciated. We've got some wonderful guests lined up in the next few weeks, and we really look forward to taking you along with us. So thank you, and see you later. Thanks for listening to this episode. You can subscribe to the Sorted Indie Retail Sessions podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all other platforms. If you fancy joining us as a guest, or you think you know someone you'd like to hear in an upcoming episode, get in touch with us and let us know. We're on all the usual social channels at Sorted Official, or get in touch via email at brand@sorted.com.